Welcome back, everybody. We are the Video Store Junkies, and this is Q-Tips, and we are bringing you some recommendations to watch over the weekend on streaming. So we'll just jump right in, and I'm going to pass this over to Bill.
Oh, hey, well, I've got an old movie here, and I mean old. In fact, old is even in the title. It's The Old Dark House from 1932, currently streaming on Tubi. This movie is like so old. It's one of those movies that you feel like they just had invented sound, and yeah, and it's pre-code, so they can like slip in some things. This is a classic old horror movie. Stop me if you've heard this one before. A bunch of people on a rainy night, their car breaks down, and they have to go into a creepy old house with a bunch of strange, possibly gay people. Yep, it's the Rocky Horror Picture Show, but there's no music. But it does have, oh man, it's got everything. This is a James Whale movie. And if you know Bride of Frankenstein, I mean, just an amazing filmmaker. It's also got Ernest Thesiger, who was Dr. Pretorius in Bride of Frankenstein. He's mincing up the place. He's fantastic. Okay, so this movie is very popular if you're taking a film studies course and you have to write about, queer cinema. Because, yeah, it's all over the place. I mean, it's 1932, so like they can't make it obvious, but it's obvious. It's great. And Boris Karloff is in it. So that's my theme is Boris Karloff movies. And he plays this mute manservant. Karloff wasn't a giant, I mean, when he played Frankenstein, he was wearing the boots and everything. He wasn't a man who was intimidating by his size, but somehow in this movie he is like a professional wrestler or something. I mean, he just seems, if anything, scarier than even the Frankenstein monster. So he's great. Doesn't have any lines, but he's fantastic in this. And it's a fun movie. It's got Charles Lawton, for God's sakes. I mean, that's incredible. A solid cast all the way through. If you like old school stuff, this is one of those films that was lost for a long time. People thought we were never going to see it again, but luckily it's in pretty good shape. So catch that on Tubi, and I will toss this over to Paul.
Why, thank you, Bill. Yeah, I second it. It's a great movie. It's actually a horror comedy. It's kind of a parody of that trope of the old dark house, is it not? If I remember correctly.
I was expecting it to be more comedy than it turned out to be.
I was gonna say its reputation is a comedy, but it's
yeah. I mean, Charles Lawton's funny no matter what you do. And the fact that like the patriarch, this 110-year-old man, is obviously played by a woman with about 18 inches of makeup on her face. It's James Whale makes funny movies, even if he's not meaning to. But I think he meant to. It's fun. Definitely recommend it.
But yeah, it's more of a subtle,
dry British
humor. Dry humor, yes. So, well, my films are old too. Not quite that old though. And originally the theme was going to be films I saw on TV and scared the crap out of me when I was younger. But then I realized, wait, my films have two connections. One, they're directed by the great Dan Curtis, and two, they star Karen Black. So my first film is from 1976, and it is Burnt Offerings, directed by Dan Curtis, written by Robert Marasco. Well, based on a novel by Robert Marasco, but written by Dan Curtis and William Nolan. Stars Karen Black, Oliver Reed, Betty Davis. Come on, Betty Davis. Burgess Meredith is in there as well. And this is your classic 70s. I mean, it's actually, again, it's an old dark house movie. It's I think when it came out, it kind of got blasted for itself feeling old and creaky, but it has that sort of classic 70s feel to it, which definitely wasn't something I was ready for when I was a kid. Like the way this thing ended, I was just like, what? My cousin and I remember watching it. We're like, what the fuck? Good, solid, slow burn, creepy film. You're pretty much going to know where it's going, but that's fine. Well worth watching. Oh, where is it playing, you ask? It's playing on Amazon Prime, Paramount Plus, Epix, and DirecTV. Again, that's Burnt Offerings, starring Oliver Reed, Karen Black, and Betty Davis. I can't do Betty Davis for me, sorry. So, and speaking of classics, I'll pass this to Renee.
Well, hello. My recommendation is Well, I guess it could be a classic depending on what kind of circles you run in, but probably not. This is quite a sassy, sexy movie about some men that are dying because they're getting hanky pankied to death.
You watched it. You watched it.
I
Yay!
did. And so a guy has to come and investigate what happens. And man, when I tell you there's some ladies in this movie, I think that Zachary would really like this movie. There's lots of boobies. Get it?
Mhm.
Get it?
Ah,
Lots of ladies in sexy cool sunglasses.
I'm sorry,
And
did someone say boobies and ladies?
oh yes, I've
Oh,
You just,
summoned
you just summoned
him.
me onto the episode.
if you say boobies 3 times, Zach's appears.
Oh, perfect timing.
Yes,
It is as the prophecy foretold.
it is. Oh, so this movie is so silly, and it's pretty much it's kind of what I thought it would be based on what I was told, and I think that you'll really enjoy it. It's silly, it's fun. There's just a lot of visual things. Visual enjoyment for the whole family. There's something for everyone. Well, maybe not the family per se, but the whole family that's over the age of 18. So yeah, my recommendation is Invasion of the Bee Girls, and it is available on Tubi, Plex, Freevee, and Colpix.
And I just want to interject, and it's also known as Graveyard Tramps.
Huh.
Invasion of
Sorry.
the Bee Girls is definitely a better title.
Yeah.
Yeah, it fits more.
It definitely fits more. Yeah. Zachary, do you have any recommendations?
It's funny that you should mention that, Renee, or that you should ask that question, because I have many recommendations. Are you guys finished recording, by the way? Is this the
No.
last?
No, we are not.
Okay.
Oh no.
We were
Well-
a little late getting started.
Okay. Well, well, nobody actually knows that I just randomly showed up in the middle of this episode, but I will say that I did do that, and that is because I am furiously editing our newest episode, which is set to drop this Friday. And if you subscribe to the podcast, you probably already know what it's going to be. But if you don't, or you somehow missed our last episode, I suggest you go back and watch, 9 Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And then you come and listen to our most recent episode, which is part 1. And then this week we'll have part 2, I guess actually this Friday, of our rankings of every single Nightmare on Elm Street movie. So you can follow along with us. You can go onto HBO Max, and I believe you can watch every single Nightmare on Elm Street film, except for some reason, A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, is not playing on there. I don't think it's actually playing anywhere, which is kind of weird. I wonder what the rights issue is with that movie. But apparently, if you ask Renee nicely, she will supply you with a copy. So check out all those movies, all 8 of them, and then also find a VHS copy of The Dream Master to watch, and then check out our rankings and see if you agree with how we rank every single movie in this franchise. Oh, sorry. I don't even know what we're doing here. I'll pass it to whoever would be next in line, because
well, whoever would be next is Bill. So
okay.
Oh,
Speaking
that would be
of people who got Nightmare on Elm Street 4: The Dream Master from Renee, Bill, what's your next pick?
A perfect segue. Continuing with the theme of Boris Karloff on this fine Halloween month. So, Old Dark House was one of his very, very first movies. And I end with one of his very, very last movies, and probably his last really great movie, which is 1968's Targets, directed by Peter Bogdanovich, who was an up and coming guy working for Roger Corman. And basically, Roger went to him and said, "Here's the deal. We made The Terror. Nobody can figure out a damn thing about what this movie's about. It hasn't really made any money, but whatever. You can make a movie, but you got to use 20 minutes of The Terror. We've got Boris Karloff for a couple days, so figure out some way to tie that in. And yeah, off you go. And don't spend a lot of money because I'm not giving you any." And so he came up with this brilliant idea that Boris Karloff plays basically Boris Karloff, who is premiering his latest movie, The Terror. And at the same time, there's this guy who's gone nuts and is planning to assassinate a bunch of people with a, high-powered rifle climbing at the drive-in. And then all these different stories come together. And it's great. And Karloff really just has such a good time with this and does such a great job playing a guy who's played monsters his whole life, but looks around at the world the way it is now and sees that the monsters he portrayed are nothing compared to the real monsters that are out there. I mean, it's good stuff. Yeah, it's got a message, but it doesn't slather it all over you. I mean, its main purpose is to entertain, and it does good stuff. And you can see Bogdanovich was definitely a talent to watch. So that is being shown on Showtime, and that's a great 1-2 punch. I would have recommended The Mask of Fu Manchu just to upset people, but it's not playing anywhere, so possibly because it's the most racist movie ever made. The people who made you know Birth of a Nation looked at Mask of Fu Manchu and said, "Damn!" But it's still a great movie. Anyway, Targets and Old Dark House. That's my Boris Karloff double feature for this week, and I throw this over to Paul.
Why, thank you. And definitely want to second Target's excellent film. Really good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, my second film, I just realized, by the way, I have yet another connection with these films, and that is that the screenplays were written by William F. Nolan. So my second film is from 1975. It's back in the day when TV movies were scary as shit, and this is probably one of the scariest, though admittedly, really only the last third is the part that anyone ever remembers. It's Trilogy of Terror. And this is it's based on 3 short stories by the great Richard Matheson, again directed by Dan Curtis. The script, William F. Nolan wrote the script for the first two sections, Julie and Millicent and Teresa, and Richard Matheson wrote the script for the only part that anyone ever remembers, which is the third one called Amelia. The first two, they're okay, they're good. They're fine. You know, they're worth watching to get you to the third one, Amelia, which really is fantastic. It's pretty much Karen Black versus a little wooden Zuni fetish doll named He Who Kills. And it's this little wooden doll of a hunter. It's based on the story Prey, Prey, by Matheson. And she accidentally breaks the chain, and the little wooden doll comes to life and hunts her down. And it is one of the best and scariest evil doll movies you will watch. And when I was a kid, I remember we used to get TV Guide, and they had a thing on it about the little doll, and I was like, oh, wow. And, of course, I was too little. I wasn't allowed to watch it. And then I got to hear the story, again, like Night of the Living Dead, I got to hear the story about it on the playground. And they related the entire story of the third one. No one remembers the first two anyway. And I was like, wow. And then when I saw it, it is definitely worth watching. Definitely creepy. They made a sequel of sorts, Trilogy of Terror 2 in 1996. Yeah, pretty much. You can skip it. Written, directed by Dan Curtis, and the third one is pretty much a ripoff of the third section of this one, but not as good. But this one is well worth watching. It is on YouTube. And again, that is a Trilogy of Terror. Again, the third section's really the best one, but the first two are worth sitting through.
Don't lie. They're just, but no, the first two set you up because they're so lame that you're like, this may be a trilogy, but there ain't much terror in it. Am I right? Well, you're wrong, because then the third one. So you got off lucky. I watched that damn thing the day it premiered. And I'm a bit older than you, but I slept with the lights on that night because that ending literally, you know how you say, raised the hackles on my neck. I don't know what hackles are, but something was rising on my neck. I think every hair on my body just stood on end. It looked like
the final shot is utterly fucking terrifying.
Absolutely.
I mean, I just watched it again, the ending of it recently, and the ending itself is just probably some of the most creepy imagery. Honest to God, really well done. So speaking of fetish, Zuni fetish doll. Speaking of, because it's a fetish doll, not that kind of fetish, but that's what he is. He's called a fetish doll, but that's not what it is. Speaking of He Who Kills, I'll pass this to Zach. Unless he left.
I recommended 8 movies. I don't know what more you want from me, Paul. I'm just going to re-recommend all those 8 movies because I actually did not have. I was not kidding. I didn't have anything prepared. I was literally.
I'll pass this to.
No,
speaking of,
you already passed it to me. So I now, yeah, that's right. I own this show now. So speaking of fetishes, I'm going to pass it to Renee.
Wow.
See what I did?
Yeah.
So, sometimes you watch a movie. Well, we all know what happens. You watch a movie and the player decides that you want to watch what's next. It doesn't give you the option. It doesn't ask you. It just playing whatever shit show is on next. And sometimes it's not good, but sometimes it is good. And sometimes it's just weird. And that's what I have for you today. There's this man. He was in an accident, and it gave him these psychic powers. Essentially, he's a little bit of a jackass, but he does use his powers for good. He tries to help the police solve crimes. Unfortunately, he was left fairly disfigured in this accident, and he just can't seem to get over it because he's very much the ladies' man, and he wants to be with all the chicks, and he just doesn't feel like he can do that with his messed up face. Well, it just so happens that this lady comes along and offers to make him a deal. And
Wow, I can't believe you saw this movie.
Me either. And so and he took her up on that offer. And this movie is so goofy and it's so strange. And I looked at who directed it and I said, son of a bitch. Yeah. I was like, as soon as I saw it, I knew you guys would be like, oh, at least you. This is a movie by Mr. Herschel Gordon Lewis. And this movie is called Something Weird. And it is weird. But it's so oddly entertaining, but very, very weird. And I don't really know what else I can say about this movie, but it is available in two places. My favorite place, Tubi, and Zachary's favorite place, the Arrow Player. So there's really no reason not to watch this. Something weird.
Oh, man. It's not his best, but it's not his worst.
It's so bizarre.
It is.
It's just so...
The makeup. Oh, my God.
It's amazing. It's like, we'll just go to the neck and stop.
Yeah, that's all we got.
Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad. So yeah, that everybody should watch that movie. And I guess that's all we have. So does anyone have anything to sing us out with?
I think Zach mentioned he was going to have something to sing us out with, didn't he?
Oh,
the
I
Golden
think I
Throat.
actually did mention that's a different thing, Bill. Yeah, I think I did mention that on the episode I am literally currently editing. But I didn't look up the song or the lyrics, so I only know one line from the song. So Renee, you're gonna have to get very creative with this, okay? Actually, I don't even know one line. I know two words from the song. So here we go. Dream Warriors. That's all I know. So make it work, Renee. Thanks.
Perfect.
Dream Warriors.
For the weekend of October 28th, Bill recommended The Old Dark House, available on Tubi, and Targets, available on Hoopla and Showtime. Paul recommended Burnt Offerings, available on Prime and Paramount Plus, and Trilogy of Terror, available on Flix Flings. I recommended Invasion of the Bee Girls, available on Tubi, Flex, Freevee, and Cult Picks, and Something Weird, available on Tubi and the Arrow Player. And Zachary recommended the Nightmare on Elm Street series, available on HBO Max.
Dream Warriors. Dream Warriors.
And maybe tonight you'll be gone. I feel the touch come over me. I can't
Dream Warriors. Dream Warriors.
Maybe tonight you'll be gone.
Dream Warriors. Dream Warriors. Dream Warriors.